Okay, today on this how-to, we're going to show you how to make up a main panel. We've got everything ready to go here. We've already counted all our quantities of breakers and everything we need. So we've got that ready to go. As you can see, a lot of electricians don't do this, but what we do, we like to identify all our feeds coming in to the top of the panel. It makes some of this a little bit easier. We'll identify them inside the panel as well, and the wires coming in right now are identified. We'll show you in a minute. But I'd like to do this for future too. If somebody needs to track something down, chase something down on these home runs, they can easily find which one it is and where it goes. Let's get started. First thing we're going to do is get the cover off here. You can see we do have some breakers already connected. That's just our temporaries for some things for the rough ends, some of the work we've been doing. We'll get the cover off here and get started. So this panel is hot, so we've got a battery light fixture here we're going to use. We can see we're going to shut the main off so that our bus bar is cold, and we will be working with a hot feed, so this area here you definitely don't want to get into here while you're making up all your breakers. Power is off. Here's all our feeds coming in, previously been run. We're going to put those out of the way just a bit, and we're going to disconnect some of these temporary breakers because we'll most likely reposition those. Now, the bus currently is cold. We've got the main breaker off. But again, do not get into either one of these feed legs when you're in the panel working. As you can see, the ends of all the home runs have been identified, and those match exactly what we have coming in up here. But when we strip and begin making up these lines, could potentially lose some of those. We'll cut these off and we'll slip them on the feeds inside the panel for identification as well. But again, we also have identification up here if we get lost on what a feed is and don't have to track it down later. Okay, we've got all our feeds out of the way. And now one thing I did do, I went ahead and made up a little guard over our main lugs coming in because they are hot, just in case the ground kind of gets some flailing around on us here while we're working the panel, just so it doesn't have to meet up in that area. Some of these main panels come with lug guards to protect that space. This one doesn't, so I went ahead and just kind of protected it. It's just a little extra step of security. You can do it without, most electricians do, but I like to just protect that for some added protection. We've put our higher loads up at the top of the panel. Normally that's what we do. We put our bigger loads up top and then break down into our 15 and 20s down lower. These are 50s, double 50s. We have a range and we have a garage welder. And then we'll put our dryers on next, and our AC unit is already in here and hooked up. So those will be our first loads where we'll make up. As you can see, we've started coming down the panel with our breakers. We got our heavy loads up top and then we began breaking down the 20 amp circuits. We showed you before our labeling up here, but what we've done is divided the 12 twos and the 14 twos equally on each side of the panel, coming in both sides. That way we're not heavy loaded on one side or the other on the panel. Your two main feeds here, 120 each leg, those actually come down each side of the bus bar, and these buses alternate, so a double pole breaker is actually picking up on both sides of these buses, one for each leg. Now, individually, the single breakers are only on one side of the feed. In many of the older videos, you may see just standard breakers all the way down the panel like these 15s and 20s here. Now, most states require now these arc fault, ground fault breakers for almost every circuit in the house. It started off with just bedrooms, but now they're pretty much requiring arc fault, ground fault almost throughout the house. And I believe in the future here soon, they're going to change the code to where just about everything in the panel has to be arc fault, ground fault in every circuit in the house. We have approximately $1,000 in breakers on this home here. There's, I think, 12 20s and 7 15s, roughly, maybe a little more. Now, they used to sell the, and I'm not sure if they still do, sell the ground fault breakers only. Well, we go ahead and, just so we don't get into any disagreements with a building inspector, we just use the arc fault, ground fault on everything. 5 minutes arguing with the building inspector on whether or not it needs the arc fault in addition to just the ground fault. It's not worth arguing over $5 for one breaker. You could spend more time in that just breaking out the code book and trying to prove yourself right, and then you got him upset because you showed him something that he thought he should have knew. But so anyway, for building inspection, ease of passing, we go ahead and just put arc fault, ground faults on just about everything, other than the ones that we know for sure that there won't be any disagreements on. Also, I had mentioned earlier where we clipped the previously labeled home runs. We clipped that piece off, and as you can see, we do slip it on the circuit as we go, right where it goes to the breaker. That way in the future, if anyone needs to know, for some reason, I mean, we've got it well labeled up here, but it's sometimes if you're in the panel and want to know and not chase it up through here to find out what it is, it's nice and easy to have that labeling right inside the panel so you know which circuit you're working on. Also, as we're putting breakers in, identifying them, coming down the panel, we also go ahead and create our circuit directory as we go. That way we don't have to go back in here later. Even though it's easy, we don't have to go back in here later and identify which breaker's which. We just go ahead and make our circuit directory as we go. So currently we don't use the arc fault, ground faults on the bathrooms and garage. You're still, at this point, we can use just the GFCI at location, at the home run location. So we'll just put standard breakers in for the garage outlets as well as the bathroom outlets, and we'll just put the GFCIs right up there in that location. And that does save a little bit of money. These are $50 versus a GFCI in that location. Protecting it is only about $18 to $20. So this particular project has a gas dryer. Now what we do, we go ahead and run a 10-3 with ground to that location, but with the gas dryer, we will just put it on the 20 amp breaker currently, and then leave an extra space here. That way if somebody goes to an electric dryer in the future, they just convert the outlet at that location and go ahead and wire it up as a 220 circuit. So we leave that space, that way you don't have to move breakers later. All right, here we're gonna run you through one full connection being made. He's gonna run one of the 12 to 20 amp circuits with the arc fault, ground fault. First, he's gonna strip down the outer insulation to about within 2 inches of the top of the panel. And he's cutting off the tag label that we have at the end of the Romex. Actually, he's making a new one. Cutting the outside insulation off, you want to use a very sharp knife, but be careful not to penetrate too deep. You just slightly score the insulation and then peel it back. We'll make up the bare ground first. We're going to keep those all fed to the back corner of the panel as neatly as possible. Building inspectors like to see neatness. And that will be applied to the neutral bar that you see going down through the back of the panel there. And as you can see, those need to slightly pass through to where you can see the other end of those bare grounds out the other side of the lug. And all these set screws are made up with a square tip or flat screwdriver. We use a square tip on everything. You can get the set screws much more secure. You want them good and snug. Your local building inspector will probably open the panel up and just check a few of your set screws for tightness. The arc fault, ground faults, the white and black both go to the breaker, so we run those down as a pair. Slip on the labeled tag and then fit both of those to the breaker. Be sure when you make those up, your breakers are labeled for the load power and load neutral. Make sure that you get those on properly. When you put breaker on one side, one will be on top, one will be on the bottom. When you go to the other side of the panel, naturally, your breaker will be flipped upside down the other way, so your blacks and whites will actually be inverted on the opposite side. They don't make a left and a right arc fault, ground fault. When you strip your wires, you want to make sure you don't strip them back too far. You don't want a whole lot of bare wire coming out of the back of the breaker, but enough so that they can see you didn't stuff insulation into the breaker. else I want to mention on this panel, on a main panel right off your meter outside, the meter's outside, this is the first main panel, and the panel comes with this bonding screw, this green screw here. Now that'll need tightened up. It comes loose because you can take it out if you're a sub-feed, using this as a sub-feed panel. You don't use that because you're isolating your neutrals. But on this main panel, we need to run that bonding screw in, snug it up, and it actually grounds the whole panel box, all the neutrals and grounds. Okay, we're about 5.5 hours in. We've got at least all the home runs and circuits made up that we have now. Future basement, we'll add more circuits to it. That's what the extra space in this panel is for. As you can see, we've zip tied some of the wires inside the panel just for neatness. If you don't have to do that, we just do that to make it a little cleaner, a little neater. We'll go ahead and get rid of our safety cardboard over the lugs there. Now, when you fire these panels up after you've wired them, you want to make sure all your breakers are in the off position once you put them in. And when you turn your main back on, never stand in front of the panel. I always stand off to the side a little bit and look away. You never know. You turn your main back on, and now you can test each circuit one at a time, turning them on for each location. We'll turn all our temporary outlets back on first. We know all those are good, and then we'll turn us one on at a time and test those circuits as we turn them on. Now, what you also want to do, don't forget, all your scrap wire, it's recyclable. You get about $1.50 a pound out of it. Don't just throw it in the trash. Recycling is a good thing, so you can give that to maybe your apprentices or something. They like a little extra cash here and there, and that'll be a nice little bonus for them. Okay, we're gonna get the panel cover put back on. First, we have to break out the tabs for the breakers we put in. And when you take these out, make sure you don't take out any more than the slots you have used up. If you do, they'll make you put a plug on here. It's just a hassle to go get that and put that in. You'll fail inspection without it. So count your breakers, count your spaces, make sure you only take out the tabs necessary. We'll put the panel cover on, we'll put our circuit directory, we'll go ahead and get that pasted on the panel here. It's a removable card, so you can pull it out and add the additional circuits later. Those are on the back. So we'll paste that, and then we'll take a Sharpie. This will be easy, close location to the numbering on the breakers. We'll take a Sharpie and we'll identify these numbers, just make them a little more legible rather than trying to search for the numbers on here. It's a little hard to read just in the manufacturing and paint over top of it, so we'll make those a little more legible. And we'll put the panel cover back on, and that'll wrap it up.